Hello. Today we're discussing Parshat Toldot. Toldot, the meaning of the word is offspring or generations. Basically, there is a wider meaning of this word Toldot. It means output, what you left after yourself. The consequences of what you have done in your life. That's probably the best description I can think of the word Toldot, providing a very general sort of meaning to the word. The Toldot is of Isaac, and Isaac's two sons, Jacob and Esau, as well as the deeds and achievements of Isaac. Both of which are the subject of the Torah section, of this Torah section. In this parsha, we meet Isaac when he is already married to Rivka for 20 years. And they don't have any children. Finally, Rebecca gets pregnant. Rivka gets pregnant. And she is pregnant with twins. And as the kids grow inside her belly, she is constantly experiencing problems. She can feel that there is some kind of fighting taking place. Whenever she passes by the place of holiness, there is one type of fighting. And whenever she passes by something to do with the hunting, material world, the idol worshipping, there is another type of discomfort she experiences. And eventually, she decides to go and consult with the king of Shalem, which is Jerusalem, the king of Jerusalem, Melchizedek, the king Melchizedek, who was actually Shem, the son of Noah. So she goes to him for an advice, and Shem tells her that there are two children in her womb, and they both are fathers of two different nations, with two basically totally different perceptions of life. And he foretells her that the younger one will eventually rule the older one. And this is why they are fighting, even before they are born. The natural question would come up immediately, why she couldn't ask her husband Yitzhak or her father-in-law Abraham. Both were prophets of very, very, very high level of spirituality. The only explanation I found to that, the only answer I found to that question is that more than likely she didn't want to cause any discomfort to neither Abraham or Yitzhak or any distress. Because after so many years of waiting for Rivka to become pregnant, to tell them that she is having a lot of problems, what probably would create a lot of anxiety in the minds of both of those men. And in fact, Yitzhak and Abraham, it would be for both of them particularly distressing, because it will remind them the Akedah, the binding of Yitzhak, where after finally being, given a son, Abraham was asked basically to slaughter him. So here, for many years after praying for Rivka to become pregnant, Yitzhak and Abraham would surely would be devastated and to hear that Rivka is suffering from an extremely difficult pregnancy. So in order to save both of them the anxiety and the difficulties of this, she simply went to Shem and found out what she wanted to know. Why they were fighting? What is involved from spiritual point of view immediately, even when they were in a womb? Because Esau represented the physical world, the physicality. And Yitzhak represented the spiritual world, the spirituality. So one would say, okay, what's the big deal? In that case, one is in charge of the spiritual world and the other one is in charge of the physical one, and everything is okay. There is nothing to fight about. Well, both of them wanted to dominate the other side. And we can see that struggle for domination of spirituality over physicality, or vice versa, physicality over spirituality, started with both of them even in the womb of their mother while she was pregnant with them. Esau was born first. He was hairy and red-headed. And then Jacob followed, and Jacob was actually holding Esau for his heel as he was born. So Esau came out, and there was just the first thing they probably saw is Jacob's hand holding for Esau's heel. Esau and Jacob were totally different people from day one. Esau was very active, aggressive, and loved hunting and physical activities, where Jacob was very peaceful and spent most time studying Torah and improving his inner world, his spiritual world. Now we are in the year 2123. Both of the boys, Yaakov and Esau, are 15 years old. They're twins. And Abraham has passed away. So in 2123, Jewish calendar. And both of the grandsons of Abraham react to it a different way. React to the fact that their grandfather has been buried, and Esau goes hunting while Jacob stays at home and cooks a pot of lentils for his father, for Yitzhak, to eat. Why? Lentils. Why he cooks? Because when somebody passed away in a Jewish family, it is a tradition to cook something round. Lentils is there round, for the mourners. And it has got very deep spiritual meaning. When the mourners come back from the funeral, and they're obviously hungry because it's a long process going through the whole Havra Kadisha process. You all know it. You probably attended some funerals. It takes quite a few hours until you bring the body to the cemetery and bury it. And so people come back home hungry. And why lentils? Because lentils have got no mouth. The same as mourners. The mourners normally, they are speechless. They are in mourning, they are sad, they are inside themselves. And the other spiritual aspect of the lentil is it's round. So it basically reminds us that everything goes around, and in the end, we all inhabitants of this world, and the circle of life goes on. People are born, people pass away. And that is how it goes. So, what happens? Esau comes home from the hunt, and he's very, very hungry. So he goes to Jacob, "Give me to eat, feed me." And he wants Jacob even to pour the soup into his throat. Jacob says, "No problem, I will feed you on one condition. You sell me your firstborn right." Why did Jacob want Esau's firstborn birthright? because Jacob knew that in the future the firstborn will be privileged to serve in the holy temple. And Esau, he didn't care about it, basically. He didn't behave like a person who would be really very spiritual and who would be prepared to spend his life in the temple. He loved hunting and killing and all the physicality of this world. He didn't respect life much. And that's why Esau sold it. No problem. He had no hesitations, just for the bowl of soup. And then we jump quite a number of years in the Parsha, and Isaac has aged by now. And he wants to bless his children, his two sons, before he passes away. And in preparation for that blessing, Esau has to be blessed first. He is the firstborn, as far as Jacob is concerned. As far as Isaac is concerned. As far as Isaac is concerned, Esau is the firstborn. So he sends Esau for a hunt to bring some food, to kill some animals and to cook for him some food for his father, for Yitzhak. But while Esau is on the hunt, Rivka, who heard the whole conversation between Yitzhak and Esau, decides that she takes matters in her own hands. So what she does, she dresses Jacob as Esau, and she covers his arm and neck with the hairy goat skin, so that he should resemble Esau, because Jacob wasn't hairy as Esau, and sends him into Isaac's room to get the first blessing, which was destined for the firstborn son. Jacob has some doubts, and he asks, he's blind, so he can only use his other senses, hearing, touch, and he basically touches the hand, and he says, the hand is the hand of Esau, but the voice is the voice of Jacob. However, eventually, because he probably wanted to believe that everything is fine, and because Rebecca prepared very tasty foods which she sent together with Jacob instead of Esau, so Isaac believed him and gave him the first blessing. When Esau returns and discovers that Jacob got the first blessing instead of him, he becomes very angry and wants to kill his brother. So Jacob runs away to Haran, his mother's birthplace, where he will also look for a wife, whom we will meet in the next parsha. Before he actually departed for Haran, he did get another blessing as Jacob from Yitzhak. And that is a very interesting point, which we will learn about it later on. So, Jacob leaves. Jacob left his parents' home in Beersheba at the age of 63 and arrives to Haran 14 years later at the age of 77. What's going on here? We know that in the previous parsha, Elazar had made the journey basically in one day, to find wife for Isaac. Okay, it was a miracle, probably should have taken 3 days. The sages explain that for 14 years, actually, Jacob wanted to hide somewhere from Esau. So he hid himself actually in the yeshiva of Shem and Eber. He studied in Shem and Eber's yeshiva for 14 years, where he immersed himself in the Torah studies completely. That was a necessity for him, because he knew that he is going to meet Lavan, his mother's brother, his uncle, who is not the easiest person to be around with, and who is a cheat and a liar and everything under the sun, negative under the sun. And that's why he had to prepare himself spiritually, which was actually the right thing to do. We will see that later. Let's have a look at some other aspect of this parsha. You see, there are 3 Torah parsha sections, Lech Lecha, Vayera, and Hayei Sarah, which cover the chronicle of life and deeds of Abraham and Sarah and all of this. And even greater number of chapters of Torah, or Parshayot, covering the life of Jacob. Isaac is the central figure only in this parsha, in Toldot. Because you will say, yeah, but what about binding of Isaac? He was participating in that. Yes, that is true. We read in the binding of Isaac in Vayera that the story is told basically from the point of view of Abraham, from his perspective. Everything was done to Yitzhak, to Isaac, by Abraham and Hashem. But Yitzhak wasn't doing much except being the sacrificial lamb, so to speak. Similarly, the great part of Hayei Sarah is about how life is found for Isaac, but Isaac again himself is not involved in the process. You know, Abraham sent his servant to find even the wife for Isaac. He never leaves the land of Eretz Israel. More than that, Elazar, when he is talking about Isaac, Yitzhak, he is talking the son of my master. He is not even using his name. So we get very little information basically about Isaac in other Parshayot except this one, Toldot. It's even, the other interesting aspect of it is that Yitzhak was the longest living of the 3 patriarchs. Yitzhak lived for 180 years, Abraham 175, and Jacob 147. Even in this parsha in Toldot, we get little bits in pieces describing Yitzhak, his identity, his personality. The first part relates to his birth and early years and the struggles between Jacob and Esau. The later part is about how the aged and blind Yitzhak has his plans of blessing the 2 sons basically spoiled by Rivka and Jacob. It is only in the middle of the part of the Toldot we encounter active Yitzhak. What he is active about, what is going on. We discover here that he has relocated himself and his family to Gerar, and he is digging wells. And there is a fair bit of part of the parsha telling us that he dug wells in one place, and then the Philistines came over and claimed those wells. He actually reopened Abraham wells and named them exactly the same way as his father did. And then in another place he goes, and again the same story repeats itself. He dug the wells, redug Abraham's wells, and they were reclaimed by the Philistines. And then he goes somewhere else within the Philistinian land, and dug another well and found a lot of water. And this time around he settled down there. What is this all about, this well digging? Why Torah spends so much time and space and effort telling us about all of the happenings related to these well wells and digging of the wells. Let's spend some time looking at this and let's talk about this. Yitzhak as a personality and as a patriarch in many ways acts totally different comparing to Abraham, his father. Yeah, he is totally devoted to God and to carrying out God's will, and he was even prepared to be sacrificed for without any hesitation, as per God's request. No questions asked. But in the Torah's account, Abraham was fighting, saving Lot, doing lots of active things. He won great battles, and he participated in lots of world affairs. He was engaged with people, where Yitzhak doesn't leave the Holy Land. He is not allowed because of the holiness of his soul. He doesn't even take additional wives, right, or handmaids to produce some more children. So he doesn't make any more children beyond his 2 sons, and he is happy having just one wife, Rivka, all his life. So the one and only activity regarding Yitzhak is digging of those wells. On the other hand, Torah doesn't record anything about any level of dissatisfaction or anything from Abraham or Hashem himself about Yitzhak, about what he is doing and how he is doing it. He is going about his life quietly without any fanfare. He continued his father's enterprise, not by emulating his father's behavior, but by taking up the spirituality of the whole process up to the next higher level. Isaac understood one very revolutionary and necessary aspect of further elevation of the concept of one God and Judaism, or our philosophy. Abraham's methods were a method of disseminating the knowledge of Hashem, ideas, spread them around. He was teaching at any opportunity everywhere. Right? He would engage in his restaurants or cafes or whatever eateries he was setting up. People coming in and eating, and then he would tell them, either you listen to my lesson about Hashem and what this is all about, or you pay the bill. And he was giving them a very, very inflated bill. So he basically was forcing people to listen to what he has to say. And by using the magnificence of Abraham's personality, he was very engaging, and people were simply, even though they were totally unprepared, they were idol worshippers, and Abraham was talking about monotheism and talking about one God and talking about laws of Torah, but all of this was absolutely new to them. Yes, they were very impressed by everything, but the question is, how much would they internalize? How much would they remember afterwards? And the answer is yes. Abraham had thousands of people with a huge following, but none of them really were going deeply internally into themselves and applying what they learned to their own personality. So Abraham he could sow the ideas, he could plant the little spots here and there, but he could not have any serious effect or start a permanent change in the minds of people. where Yitzhak could and did. How? Well, let's look at this. If you get an assignment, and if you come over to a lecture, let's say you come over to a lecture and the subject is totally new to you, and you never read anything about it, you never heard anything about it. So what will happen to you? You will listen, you may be well impressed by the presenter, that this is a wonderful idea, but when you will leave the lecture room, very quickly you actually will forget what you just learned. Why? Because you couldn't apply, didn't relate to your internalized knowledge. However, on the other side, if you are given homework, if you are told that these are the rules and this is how you need to prepare yourself before you come over and listen to me, or listen to the concepts which you are told. So if you come over prepared, first of all, your level of understanding of what has been conveyed to you is much greater. But most importantly, you are capable, because it comes much easier to you, you can internalize, absorb the ideas which you have been told. And this absorption process of those ideas starts affecting your personality, starts affecting your psyche, your behavior, makes a new you. I'm not trying to belittle the tremendous impact Abraham's efforts made. He influenced thousands of people and attracted huge following. But these masses were nourished only by his inspiration, by his charisma, by his persona. But he couldn't leave a long-lasting presence in their minds, and as soon as they left, parted somewhere a different way, they resumed their normal own lives, and their enthusiasm for Abraham's teachings could be forgotten. Sure, there were some exclusions, but more often than not, that would be the case. Isaac understood, on the other hand, that in order to ensure continued success of his father's undertaking, his own discipline, strictness, and absolutely rigorousness, force in respect to standards. Isaac is Gevurah, force. So he would complement his reinforcement of the rules and aspects of Torah with his father's kindness and chesed. But he introduced a whole new program of self-refinement, encouraging the disciplines, the disciples, his students, to assume responsibility, right, and laying spiritual groundwork before hearing their master, Yitzhak, lessons. And this is why, if Abraham had to make lots of efforts to attract people, Isaac didn't need that. People were coming over to him, asking him to teach them. Because he communicated to the world by digging deep, by digging wells, as opposed to filling the wells with water, which normally would happen. You dig out in those days, right? Which is what Abraham was doing. He would dig out a big hole and fill it up with water from somewhere else, maybe, and then they would have a water supply for a while. Abraham was digging wells where the water would come in the natural way from the bottom, naturally. So if Abraham's message to the world was was trying to come to revive the people minds, to wake up the people minds and refresh them with water, Yitzhak's message was, you are revived now, and I am giving you water now that you have been revived. Look yourself, inside yourself, for the source of water. Look inside yourself for the source of Hashem and spirituality. Dig out the internal dirt, filth, which fills up your life, and reveal within yourself the wellspring of the divine awareness. And this was the way Yitzhak has continued his father's project. In this regard, as a next generation, Yitzhak was absolutely perfect model for humanity, perfect model of a leader. We find him meditating in the field, as we know, constantly striving to refine himself, and always focusing inward. And he was focusing people on their inward. In this way, he reached spiritual perfection so high and so intense. And it was coupled with, of course, with material success, and it drew others to him instinctively. This is why in this parsha called Toldot, we say descendants. Everybody had descendants. Adam had descendants. Noah, Shem, Abraham, Jacob, and even Terah, and Ishmael, and Esau. Everybody had descendants. And they're all central personalities in Genesis. The most important descendants in this case, in Toldot, is Yitzhak's descendants. His approach to his systemic and very precise approach to the teachings, to disciples, and his constant strive to make sure that his disciples and his children capable to stand on their own. If we jump to the future, you will see that eventually when the Holy Temple will be built in Jerusalem, the spirituality emanating from that Holy Temple will draw the whole world at large to it like a magnet. And Isaac was like a magnet. He had no need to leave the land of Israel, the Holy Land, because his disciples were coming over to him. He was capable to inspire Jewish people through his spiritual charisma. He was capable to inspire the whole world, Jewish and non-Jewish world, to come to the holy city to learn God's will. And by doing that, he was transforming the whole world to a considerable degree to what is to become God's home. I hope I didn't make this parsha too complicated. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Goodbye. See you next time.